Have you ever built a React Native app that, it works, but it just feels like a prototype? Yeah, we've all been there. Well, that's exactly what we're going to tackle. We're going to bridge that gap and turn a basic app into something that looks and feels genuinely ready for production. Let's dive in.
Okay, look at this. On the left, that's a site we all know too well. The app is functional, but those default question mark icons, they just scream work in progress. Now on the right, that's our goal, a slick, professional tab bar. That little visual jump is what makes an app feel finished and trustworthy, and we're going to break down exactly how you get there.
You know, functionality is really only half the battle. For a user to have a great experience, your app needs to look the part. Those little default icons are a dead giveaway that you haven't really tapped into the deep, native power of the platform yet, and that's the barrier we're about to smash through.
So how do we solve this? Well, the key lies in a really fundamental choice that every React Native developer has to make. It's all about understanding the difference between Expo's managed and bare workflows. This one decision basically dictates how much control you really have over your app's native code.
Think of the Expo managed workflow like this. You're renting a fully furnished apartment. It's amazing, right? You can move in on day one, everything you need is already there, and it's incredibly fast to get started. But what if you want to knock down a wall or change the plumbing? Yeah, you can't. You're stuck with the rules of the building.
Now, the bare workflow, that's a whole different story. This is like building your own house from the ground up. Yeah, it's more work at the beginning. You've got to pour the foundation, frame the walls yourself, but you get total freedom. You get to decide every single little detail. And that's the kind of power we need for this job. So when you put them side by side like this, the trade-off becomes super clear. The managed workflow is awesome for getting started fast, perfect for prototypes. But the second you need that full native control, like we do for our custom icons, the bare workflow becomes absolutely essential. It's really the only path forward for a serious growing app.
Okay, so how do we actually make the switch? Let's walk through the journey, step by step, of converting our project over to the bare workflow so we can unlock all that native goodness.
It all starts with something simple enough, a classic npm install for our icon library. But you got to pay close attention to that second command, npx expo prebuild. That is not just another line in your terminal. That's the command that is going to fundamentally change our entire project.
Seriously, let's just pause on this one command, because this is the point of no return. The moment you run npx expo prebuild, you are changing the DNA of your project. It generates the native iOS and Android folders, and you've officially moved out of that furnished apartment and are now building your own house.
And what this really means is that Expo is no longer holding your hand, managing everything behind the scenes. You are now in the driver's seat. You're responsible for the native configuration, which means things like adding our custom icon fonts. That becomes a manual task, but a super powerful one.
And here's what that manual work looks like for iOS. Don't worry, it's a pretty straightforward 4-step recipe. First, we have to dig into our node modules and find the actual font files. Second, we copy those files directly into our native iOS project. Third, we have to tell iOS that they exist by editing a config file called infoplist. And finally, we run pod install to link it all together. With our fonts now properly wired up in the native code, it's time to rebuild the app. And notice something here. We're not using an expo command anymore. We're using the standard React Native CLI. Once this build is finished, those ugly question marks will finally be gone, replaced by our beautiful new icons.
All right, we have done the heavy lifting on the native side. Now for the fun part, the payoff. It's time to use this new power we have to put that final professional polish on our UI. So here's our game plan inside the code. We're going to import the Ionicons library, and then we're going to give each tab its own specific icon. We'll set up some nice, distinct colors for when a tab is active versus when it's inactive. We'll even configure the icons to change their appearance, say from a home outline to a solid home, based on whether or not you're on that screen. It's all about those little details. And hey, one last common problem we need to fix. On modern phones, you see how our custom header is kind of overlapping with the device's notch and status bar? The fix for this is actually wonderfully simple. We just wrap our component in a special thing called Safe Area View, and it automatically and beautifully handles the layout for us.
So we went through a lot of steps there, from the terminal to the code, but why does all of this really matter? Let's just zoom out for a second and look at the powerful new skills we've just put into action.
Look, this was never just about icons. You now get the entire process of graduating an app from a simple prototype to something much more robust.
You know how to convert to the bare workflow, how to link native assets yourself, how to handle professional UI styling, and how to fix those tricky device-specific layout issues. You've basically just unlocked a whole new level of React Native development for yourself.
So your app now looks the part. It's polished, it's professional, it feels trustworthy. But a truly production-ready app, it's defined by more than just its looks, right? How does it behave? What happens when the network is slow? Or what if it fails completely? Mastering that is the next big step on the journey from a great-looking app to a truly great one.